Hello, Raptors fans, and welcome back to Raptors Report. Today, we will be looking at the Toronto Raptors' victory over the Washington Wizards. But before we do that, we're going to take a look at some trade buzz, one of the more unusual bits of trade slop that has hit my timeline. That would, of course, be the Toronto Raptors' interest in Brandon-Ingram. So this was reported on by Mark Stein, who's actually a pretty reputable rumor monger in NBA circles. And just for reference, he was the guy who was talking about how the Toronto Raptors were interested in Poeltl, and he was pretty much giving a blow-by-blow for the offseason prior and during the season, saying how there was significant interest on Toronto's end in acquiring Poeltl. And I think that he has some ins with some of the player agents within the NBA. So this is not something that should be taken lightly. I think that there's a decent chance that the Toronto Raptors are interested in acquiring Brandon Ingram, or at least are seriously considering him. So let's talk about why that might be. There's some pretty interesting things about Brandon Ingram. The first of which is the fact that Brandon Ingram is in the final year of his deal. So he is expiring at the end of this season and will be entering free agency as an unrestricted free agent. And what this means essentially is that the asking price for Brandon Ingram, especially considering that he is injured right now, will be pretty low. I don't think that there are many teams within the NBA who would be interested in trading for him as a win-now piece. And the reason for that is simply you don't know what you could expect from him for the season. You don't know if he's going to be healthy come playoff time, so why give up anything of value? And that applies to the Raptors as well. So I'll go into why that might be, but first of all, let's talk about Brandon Ingram as a player. Brandon Ingram was drafted pretty highly by the LA Lakers about 9 seasons ago. He was included in the big trade that brought Anthony Davis to the LA Lakers to join LeBron James. And as a result, Brandon Ingram has been a member of the New Orleans Pelicans for 6 seasons now. Ingram is a pretty interesting player. He is a one-time All-Star. He is a recipient of the Most Improved Player Award. And he's, when healthy, a very good scorer within the NBA with good size and peripheral abilities such as playmaking and rebounding and defense. He is a good player when he is healthy. But that is the rub. For the majority of his career, he has not really been available very much. Over his 9 seasons in the NBA, he's averaging just under 60 games per season, which is obviously not what you want to see. Last season, he had his healthiest season since his rookie campaign, where he played 64 games, and he looked very good, scoring 23 points per game with 5.5 rebounds and 6 assists on pretty good shooting splits. But why would the Raptors be interested in trading for a player in the last year of his deal who is injured quite a bit? Well, first of all, I think that this could be a buy low opportunity for the Toronto Raptors. So if the Raptors do acquire him, what they would be doing is not trading for him this season. I don't think that this season they're really looking to make a lot of noise, although if he does get healthy, he probably would help the Raptors drive wins. But with that said, the Toronto Raptors could be trading for him to acquire what are called his bird rights. And if you're not familiar with that term, I'll just explain it very quickly. Bird rights are what allow teams to go over the cap to sign their own players. So if the Toronto Raptors did acquire Brandon Ingram, they could offer him a deal where they could pay in excess of the salary cap. What that would mean is that they could make a whole bunch of different trades, take on a bunch of salary, and then still be able to go over the cap and then sign Brandon Ingram to a deal that perhaps maybe only they could give him. So it could be a pretty interesting idea from that perspective. For example, they did something similar with Poeltl, where they traded for him, sent out a first-round pick, got him. Pretty controversial trade, but they acquired him and then signed him in the offseason using his bird rights. So it would be a similar deal in that respect. Another reason that they could be interested in signing him is that he is a pretty good fit next to Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes is a playmaking forward with great defense and peripheral skills, but so far in his career, he has not been a very good shooter. Brandon Ingram is a good shooter and a good scorer. He's a career 36+% shooter on good volume, and over the past couple of seasons, he has improved his three-point shooting This season, he's shooting 37% from three. 2 seasons ago, he's shooting 39% on almost 4 attempts per game. And he kind of fluctuates in the range of 35% to just under 40%. And I think that he is a good enough shooter to play next to Scotty Barnes. And he can generate his own shot. He is a very good scorer. He can score at the rim. He can score with the mid-range. He can score the three-point line. He's a 3-level scorer. And I think that that is the kind of player that you would want to have next to Scotty Barnes, especially at the forward spot. If you take care of scoring at the forward spot, that allows you to be a little bit more creative in the backcourt. You can add some role players, maybe 3-and-D players at those spots, and you wouldn't have to worry about whether you can go and get a bucket, because Brandon-Ingram is a guy that can do that. Another thing is that he is a relatively young player. He's 27 years old, so it's not like they would be acquiring a guy who's in his 30s that would make the Toronto Raptors have to look in the short term in order to compete. This is a guy that would be within his prime, within the next couple of seasons. The Toronto Raptors could look to build on the core of Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett and whoever they add in this draft and Brandon Ingram, and then look to compete the next couple of years. So it's not like they would be limited within their window. So that's another reason. And another thing is that the Toronto Raptors, from what I gather, I don't think that they have a very big appetite for tanking. I don't think that the Toronto Raptors want this to be a multi-year tank, especially with a guy like Scotty Barnes on the club already. I think that Scotty Barnes has a very high ceiling, and it looks like he is really taking a step. I think that the Raptors are eager to build around him and put a functional team around him and look to start trying to make the playoffs relatively soon. Give him some guys he can play next to so that he doesn't get impatient and, do the thing that a lot of star players do if they're not competitive when they start getting into their prime. They start making noise and rattling the cage and perhaps even making trade demands. I don't think that the Raptors are really interested in going that route. So it could make sense to try and trade for a player that could play next to Scotty Barnes and make them competitive sooner rather than later. So those are some reasons. Let's talk about some of the concerns that you would have if you were trading from Brandon Ingram. Well, the biggest one is his health. So as I mentioned before, he has played under 60 games for his career, and he is injured this season. He's already missed 29 games this season with an ankle injury and a couple of other nagging injuries. He looks like an injury-prone player. So that would be a concern trading for Brandon Ingram. Another issue is the contract. If the Toronto Raptors trade for Brandon Ingram and they want to keep him, they would likely have to dish out some money to sign this guy. And if he plays the market right, they could be on the hook for a lot of money. And the issue would be essentially, what are you giving up to get Brandon Ingram? So that's another question. Brandon Ingram is making $36 million this season. And so you would have to be sending out some pretty significant salary in order to bring him in. And one of the things that you have to consider is that next season, Scotty Barnes's Supermax deal kicks in. He's going to start making a ton of money, which means that I believe that if the Toronto Raptors were going to acquire Brandon Ingram, they would probably have to send out either Immanuel Quickley or RJ Barrett. And the reason for that is that with those two players on the books, plus Jakob Poeltl, who they're probably going to keep, I would assume, and Scotty Barnes, you're looking at a team that's pretty much capped out and not going to have a ton of salary to offer to role players and additional players that they're going to be taking on board, like draft picks and that sort of thing. So what I believe would be that the Toronto Raptors would probably be looking to send out either RJ Barrett or Immanuel Quickley. And I would assume that the front office would probably be looking to send out Immanuel Quickley. Immanuel Quickley is in a similar boat as Brandon Ingram. His track record playing, he's been relatively durable for his career, but this season he just has not been healthy, really, at all. We've barely been able to see the guy play, whereas RJ Barrett has played quite a bit and has looked very good. I would want to keep RJ Barrett. I think that he has potential to be, a solid contributor perhaps a star contributor for the Toronto Raptors for the foreseeable future. So if the Toronto Raptors were to be sending out RJ Barrett, they would probably have to be compensated with draft picks and or prospects, that kind of thing, if they were to send him out and getting Brandon Ingram in return. However, if they were going to send out Immanuel Quickley, it might have to be the Toronto Raptors sending out compensation in order to pick up an expiring for his deal. Because let's face it, I don't know if a lot of teams would be interested in getting Immanuel Quickley on his salary with his injury history this season. I think that he might be seen as a negative asset, even though I was pretty high on him when they made that signing. So things can shift quickly in the NBA. I'm not exactly sure. If they could get off of Immanuel Quickley's contract without giving up much, I would be in favor of trading him straight up for Brandon Ingram. The problem with that is that I don't think that the New Orleans Pelicans would be interested in making that trade because DeJounte Murray, who they just acquired, is on the team. They gave up some pretty significant stuff, Dyson Daniels plus a pick, and they also have CJ McCollum. So where is he going to fit in that backcourt? And I don't really think that they're going to be able to get off of a guy like CJ McCollum. So they would have a ton of salary tied up in 3 guards who are probably not a very good fit together. So there would probably have to be a third team involved, maybe a team like the Lakers. But then again, are the Lakers going to be interested in trading for Immanuel Quickley, who has not been healthy this season? Would a contender be interested in trading for Immanuel Quickley, who hasn't been healthy this season? So there's a lot of question marks around that kind of a deal. But in principle, I'm not completely against trading for Brandon Ingram. I think if they are willing to shell out the money to keep him around, I think it could be a pretty good gamble. One of the things that the Toronto Raptors could be considering is a Kawhi type situation. The Raptors were interested in acquiring an injured Kawhi Leonard. Was he going to be able to play a full season? They saw value there. They saw a player who was a difference maker, a superstar in Kawhi Leonard, and they said, let's go for it. And they used their, at the time, very advanced load management scheme where they were able to keep him healthy into the playoffs, and they won a championship. So this could be a similar situation, although they would obviously have one fewer year on a deal. They would essentially be trading for an expiring Brandon Ingram, and perhaps seeing that maybe they could sign him to a long-term deal in the offseason. But of course, it's very risky. You're trading for a player who has not been able to stay healthy. And as a result, I would be okay if they're not going to be trading many quality future assets to acquire him. If it's a buy low situation where they're able to get him for, say, Immanuel Quickley and his contract, I would probably be okay with that as long as they're willing to sign him in the offseason. If they're giving up a lot for him, I'm not really that interested. As for his health this season, it would be cool to see him come in and play a couple of games. But again, you have to consider what the Raptors are trying to do this season. I don't think that they're trying to be very good. So maybe it would be a good idea to trade for him and then simply let him recuperate the rest of the season. So those are my thoughts on acquiring Brandon Ingram. I think it's a deal with some potential, but I don't think that they should be selling the farm to get this guy. Anyway, there is a game to talk about because the Toronto Raptors did play the Washington Wizards last night, and it was probably their biggest blowout of the season. The Raptors took care of them pretty handily. So why don't we get into the player evaluations, and we can discuss who are the best players of the game. And this one, pretty easy. Scotty Barnes was, again, excellent. 24 points in 29 minutes. He was 10 of 19 from the field, so efficient. 1 of 4 from 3, and almost all of them were catch and shoot, so happy there. 3 of 3 from the free throw line. 4 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, a block, 1 turnover, and was great defensively. We're getting into ho-hum territory here. He's just doing this every game. He is playing really good defense and is scoring very well, and he's driving wins. When you watch him play, he's consistently making winning plays. He is consistently protecting the basket, picking up the other team's best player, blocking shots, scoring on the other end, making the right play. There's not much you can ask for with this guy that he's not delivering. He's pretty much getting it done. And against a team like the Wizards, who aren't putting up a ton of resistance, especially inside, he knew where the points were. On the inside, he got inside, he dunked the ball a bunch of times, caught alley-oops. He was doing the screening. He's added that. He's become a, hybrid point forward big that is not afraid to use his body to set screens for other players. He knows that if he needs to, he can get the ball. He can dribble the ball if he wants to. So there's no pressure. I think that he's just grown very comfortable doing all of the things that he can do, which back to the basket, posting up, setting screens, being a big, and then if he wants to, he can handle the ball on the perimeter. So this is what I love to see, adding all of the different elements of his game, being a, big time win driver, a guy who is going to, if he's on the floor, make your team much better and give you a very good chance of winning. So he was easily the best player in the game last night. Next up, we'll give it to Jakob Poeltl. Again, Mr. Number 2. The guy has been probably the Raptors' second best player this season. No surprise that he was here. 12 points on 11 shots, so not incredibly efficient. He missed some bunnies. 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals, no blocks, and 1 turnover. Yak's passing this game was fantastic. He hit Scotty Barnes with 2 alley-oop passes. He was kind of handling the ball while Scotty Barnes was setting the screen, which is a very interesting play. When Scotty Barnes is so physically dominant over the other team, which he was last night, you can do a lot of creative stuff like that. You can have him being the guy who is setting the screen and catching the lob, and your center is the guy who is dribbling the ball. And Jakob Poeltl, he makes the right play the vast majority of the time. He is a very solid contributor. He was playing very good defense. I find that the pairing between him and Scotty Barnes is really good. Jakob Poeltl bangs in the post, and then Scotty Barnes roams around and gets the blocks and, contests shots. He comes over and puts extra pressure on teams that are trying to score at the rim. And then, Scotty is fast enough to recover. Those two on defense give you a really good chance of winning the rebound battle and winning the paint protection battle. I think that they're a very good pairing on the inside, and I can see why long-term the Raptors are interested in keeping Jakob Poeltl around. I was on team trade Yak, but now I just feel like the pairing between him and Scotty just seems to make sense. And if they're looking to compete in the short term, say next season, Jakob Poeltl is going to be difficult to replace. He just brings a lot to the table, and we saw it last night. The passing, the rebounding, the defense, being in the right place at the right time, setting good screens, just doing pretty much exactly what you want. Next up, let's give it to Davion Mitchell. Davion Mitchell, 10 points on 4 of 4 shooting. He was 2 of 2 from 3-point range, so great job. 4 rebounds, 9 assists. 0 steals, 0 blocks, 5 turnovers, so that was kind of an issue. His role should be to make simple passes. Anytime the passes are a little bit more difficult than simple, he's turning the ball over, and that's an issue. But in the totality of the game, when you see what he is doing on the defensive end, when you see a guy like Jordan Poole score 3 points on 1 of 9 shooting, 0 of 5 from 3, this guy is a defensive menace. And he is doing pretty much everything in his power to try and win you the game on the defensive end. And then when he's perfect from the field on the other side and he's hitting shots, and there was a really nice play where the team kept giving him the ball on the block against Jordan Poole. Poeltl passed it to him, I think, twice, and then Scotty Barnes passed him the ball again, pretty much just being like, go at this guy. And on the last pass, there was like 2 seconds left on the shot clock. He had to go. And what did he do? He just went straight to the rim around Jordan Poole and laid it up and in. And I think that the team is trying to get him to be a little bit more aggressive on offense. And I think that he has good burst off of the dribble. I think that he can get past guys. I think that that's an underexplored element of his game, is his driving game. I don't know if his finishing is there yet, but if he can get into the heart of the defense, he can make that simple pass to, say, a Jakob Poeltl for the floater, or he can get all the way to the rim and score. I think he had a great game, and he has definitely been a sneakily good role player for the Raptors. And the stat sheet does not tell the full story with this guy, especially when it comes to steals. He turned the ball over 5 times, but he makes the other team turn the ball over a ton with his ball pressure, his ability to draw offensive fouls when he's going around screens. He sells that call very well, and he goes after the ball handler. And the screen setter has to be pretty aggressive with their screens in order to get him off of the ball handler. And when that happens, he gets foul calls. He runs into the pick really hard, and the refs call the foul when he gets screened too hard. They call the offensive foul. The Washington Wizards almost turned the ball over as many times as they had field goals. Davion Mitchell was a big part of that. So, you have to just say, like, this guy is making a big difference on defense. Next up, we'll go to RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett kind of struggled to score this game. He had 11 points on 10 shots. He was 5 of 10 from the field, which is fine. He was 1 of 2 from 3, which is also fine. He was 0 of 2 from the line. That is kind of a concern. The free throws, there's got to be some kind of mental block there, because he is shooting the 3 very well since the new year, but his free throw shooting has fallen off of a cliff. I don't get it. He had 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 turnover. I feel like he just was not needed to score that much this game. And I like the energy that he was bringing on defense. Of course, he still makes a couple of mistakes here and there, but he looks a lot more locked in on defense. And I think it's the presence of guys like Davion Mitchell who are really pushing this team to be a good defensive ball club. So Davion, Poeltl, Scotty Barnes, and even Ochai Agbaji, who is back in the starting lineup in the absence of Grady Dick. These guys care about defense. And when you get a bunch of guys that care about defense, guys who maybe weren't locked in at the beginning of this season on the defensive end, RJ Barrett, for example, are really starting to lock in on that end. And his defense has taken a measurable visual leap. Like, I am noticing that he is making more plays on that end and is getting burned a lot less often. So huge development there. So even if he's not putting up gaudy point totals, I'm happy with what I'm seeing. Last but not least, let's put it that way. Ochai Agbaji is back. He had 12 points on 8 shots. He was 3 of 7 from 3, which is very nice. They missed his shooting. 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 3 steals, 1 block, 2 turnovers. And between him and Davion Mitchell on the perimeter, these guys are putting up a ton of resistance on the other team's best perimeter players. Very solid defensively. That's what I've always said about Ochai Agbaji, is that he's not like a shutdown defender, but he's always there and he's always in between the player that he should be guarding and the basket. And he's a very heady defender. He had 3 steals in this game and a block. He's a physical guy. He can play defense, and the Raptors were just completely locked in. I think that this defensive lineup, so Poeltl, Barnes, Barrett, Agbaji, Davion Mitchell, this is a tough team to score on. This is a good defensive club. There's not really a weak link. I mean, probably RJ, but at the same time, as I've mentioned, he's improved. This is not going to be an easy team to get baskets on, that starting lineup. And Ochai is, 3-and-D role player, guy who's going to put in the effort on the defensive end and knock down 3-point shots, which he did last night. So glad to have him back in the lineup. Raptors are looking pretty scary defensively. Off of the bench, they got some really nice contributions. Jamal Shead, let's talk about him, because Jamal Shead has been a big surprise for me this season, especially among the rookies. He has been the star that has shined the brightest. I wasn't a huge fan of the pick, basically because he was not a good shooter in college. But now he has shown that he has the ability to knock down 3-point shots. He had 10 points in this game on 3 of 5 shooting. He was 1 of 2 from 3. He hit all 3 of his free throws. 2 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, and only 1 turnover, and good defense. He's just really bringing solid contributions off of the bench almost every night. The Toronto Raptors have had a lot of really tragic bench guards over the years and have really lacked bench production at the guard spot. And having Jamal Shead come off the bench and provide the Toronto Raptors with steady scoring, good passing, running the show well, playing strong defense and being annoying, just kind of doing what you expect an NBA guard to be able to do. He is doing that, and I'm liking what I'm seeing. He is a contributor in his first season, and it looks like he's going to be a solid NBA pro for the rest of his career. I'm very happy with this pick that the Toronto Raptors made. It looks like they got a real NBA player. Very happy with him. Next up, let's talk Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown continues to bring it. 10 points on 4 of 9 shooting. He was 2 of 4 from 3. Very nice to see. And hitting some above the break threes, some wing threes. You love to see that. Venturing out of the corner, catch and shoot above the break threes. That's a very valuable skill. He had 4 rebounds. Again, he's a very good rebounder for a guard. 2 assists, 3 steals, 1 block, 0 turnovers. Yeah, he's bringing it. He's making me eat crow. He looks great. The Cowboys back, baby. He is back to looking like a very solid NBA role player, jack of all trades that can pretty much do exactly what you want, which is play defense, hit shots, move off of the ball, play the facilitator role, be a connector, play in the passing lanes, just doing a really, really good job. Great job, Bruce Brown. Another very solid contributor, Orlando Robinson, 10 points on 3 of 8 shooting. So his touch is a bit iffy. He shot 2 threes last game in garbage time. I think he's trying to show that he can stretch it out. And, you know, when the pressure is off, when the Raptors are blowing out a team like the Wizards, you know, this guy's on a couple of 10-day contracts. He's trying to show that he can do some other stuff. I'm not too opposed to it. Shoot some threes, big fella. He was 4 of 5 from the free throw line, 6 rebounds, 3 of them offensive rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 1 turnover. Playing pretty good rim defense. He's a very big body. That is something to note, is that he is a legit big. This is not a situation where there's a guy playing up like a forward trying to play the center spot. He's a legit center-sized player. So, you know, maybe there's something there. And there are a couple other players who played, but this game was just a complete blowout from beginning to end. The Toronto Raptors started the game, I believe it was like a 15-2 run. They were completely dialed in on defense. They were harassing the Wizards and made them quit early. And as a result, the rest of the game was just a cakewalk. The Wizards got, I think, maybe within 10 the rest of the evening, but then it quickly ballooned back to like a 20 to 30 point lead for the Raptors. The Raptors are looking very scary defensively. They don't really have a ton of weak links. Their defense is on a string. They have a bunch of impact defenders. And against a young team like the Wizards, who don't really have a developed offensive system, don't really have many go-to options, don't really have the shooting to punish certain defensive schemes, the Raptors are just going to walk all over them. And that's really what happened. The only player who was really effective at all for them was Kyle Kuzma, who did have a pretty good night. There were some crazy highlights in this game for the Wizards. Even if they only scored 82 points, they had like 3 poster dunks. Corey Kispert posterized Scotty Barnes. Kyle Kuzma posterized Orlando Robinson. Kyle Kuzma hit famous Larry Bird shot from behind the backboard on the baseline over the backboard into the net, which is like an insane shot. I've only really seen Larry Bird make that shot. Maybe there's somebody else, but Kyle Kuzma, of all players, who I'm not a huge fan of, managed to make that shot. But other than that, the Raptors still just completely dominated them. Yeah, the Raptors, the tank is not looking very healthy right now. The Raptors have won 7 of their past 8 games. So we'll see what the trade deadline brings. I have no idea what the front office is going to do. Next up, the Toronto Raptors play the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls are actually one of the teams that they're chasing for the play-in right now. They have looked pretty sketchy recently. They haven't won a ton of games. They might even blow it up before the trade deadline. And it will be at home. So the Raptors will be playing the Bulls at home. Honestly, I think that the Raptors will probably win that game as well. So could be a 6-game winning streak. Who knows? So anyway, that is the video. Let me know. What do you think of Brandon Ingram? Is this a risk the Raptors should be willing to take? Are you iffy on it? Could you see it happening and be okay with it? Or are you totally in, totally out? Let me know in the comments, and also on Twitter and Blue Sky, where you can reach me at Raps Report. I love talking to Toronto Raptors fans. We are the best. Love hearing your comments, answering your questions, all that good stuff. And please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It really helps the channel grow and be shown to more fans like you. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.